My girlfriend posted, "Real men don't get jealous when their woman has male friends." After I questioned why she was texting another guy at 2 a.m., I commented, "You are absolutely right." Then I updated my profile pic with her best friend. The hypocrisy revealed itself in 43 minutes. I am Lincoln. I am 26 years old, and for the last 2 years, I was defining myself by the stability I was creating. I had spent my early 20s reeling from the kind of messy, dramatic relationships that leave you perpetually exhausted. When I met Vivian, I promised myself I would be the calm center, the partner who never created unnecessary conflict. My internal rule was simple: I must be trusting, reasonable, and non-confrontational, and in return, the relationship would be stable. I bought the lie that trust was about silence, not boundaries. Vivian and I had a decent apartment, splitting the rent near downtown. Things were good, or at least they felt safe. That safety was the most important thing to me. We moved in together 8 months ago, and I mentally checked off the box. Stable adult relationship achieved. That comfortable status quo began to dissolve about 3 weeks ago. Not with a bang, but with the subtle, insidious blue light of a phone screen at 3 in the morning. Vivian had met this guy, Daniel, at her yoga class. Just a friend, she had said, and I believed her because I wanted to. I trusted her. That is what I was, a trusting partner. I had male friends, she had female friends. Adult relationships. Basic stuff. But the casual smoothies after class gave way to constant phone activity. The phone was always face down when I was near. She would step out onto the small balcony to take his calls, her voice dropping to a giggle I hadn't heard directed at me in months. And then she would fall silent the second I walked into the room. It was not the fact of the friendship that bothered me. It was the performance of secrecy. 3 weeks ago, I woke up disoriented. The room was bathed in an unsettling, pulsing blue light. It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Vivian was hunched over her phone, her thumb moving fast. "Who are you texting at 2 in the morning?" I asked, my voice thick with sleep. She flinched violently, physically throwing the phone under her pillow like a teenager hiding contraband. "Just my friend from yoga," she mumbled, not meeting my eyes. "He is going through some stuff. Time zones, you know. His family overseas is dealing with drama." I wanted to believe her. The excuse was so thin it was transparent, but I was tired, and I was committed to the lie, to avoiding the conflict that would tag me as insecure. I let it go. Then it happened again 3 nights later. 2 a.m. The blue light, the muffled giggles, the quick jerk when I shifted in the bed. I did not ask that night. I just lay there, the familiar weight of dread settling on my chest. I knew I had to speak up, but doing so meant shattering the peace I had worked so hard to maintain. It meant abandoning the one rule I had for myself: don't be the dramatic one. The following morning, over weak coffee in the kitchen, I finally did it. I chose my words carefully, trying to sound like a news anchor delivering a dry, objective fact. "Hey, I have noticed you are texting Daniel really late at night a lot." I started, my hands gripping the mug. "It makes me a little uncomfortable. Can we talk about it?" Vivian went from 0 to defensive in 2 seconds flat. Her jaw clenched. "Oh my God. Are you serious right now?" He is just a friend. You are being so insecure. This is exactly what is wrong with men. You can't handle your girlfriend having male friends without getting all jealous and possessive. The immediate over the top reaction was a diversion, a verbal smokescreen. I tried to pull her back to the facts. I am not saying you can't have male friends, I countered, keeping my voice even. I am saying 2 a.m. texting sessions, repeatedly, are a bit weird. She slapped her hand on the counter. Whatever. I am not having this conversation. You either trust me or you don't. She stormed off to get ready for work, leaving a wake of cold silence behind her. I stood in the kitchen, feeling a deep nausea. I had followed my rules. I had been reasonable. I had asked to talk like an adult. In return, I was publicly labeled insecure and possessive. I figured we would both cool down and talk later. I did not realize talking later meant she would broadcast my perceived failure to our entire social circle. The stability I was fighting for was already gone. I just hadn't seen the evidence yet. I went to work that day feeling hollowed out, the argument with Vivian replaying in my head. I had walked into that conversation, trying to be the adult, and I had been slapped down and called a child. I was still clinging to the hope that she would cool down, send a text apologizing for her defensiveness, and that we could circle back to the core issue. Her secrecy, not my feelings. My Lee. The one about confrontation leading to stability was still stubbornly alive. Around 3 o'clock that afternoon, I took a break from the spreadsheets. I opened Instagram. The office lighting was harsh, but it couldn't dim the blinding white text on the black background of the post. She had made 15 minutes earlier. It was one of those quote graphics designed to be shared widely and preach a simple, judgmental gospel. The quote was, of course, the exact distillation of the accusation she had leveled at me that morning. Real men don't get jealous when their woman has male friends. Insecurity is so unattractive. Know your worth, ladies. The blood rushed out of my face, leaving me cold. I had tried to talk privately, respectfully, and she had responded by broadcasting my perceived flaw to everyone we knew. The sheer cowardice of the move was breathtaking. She didn't want a conversation, she wanted a public judgment, delivered safe, flee behind the shield of a viral graphic. The comments were already piling up, each one a fresh layer of humiliation. Her sister, who I had spent countless family dinners with, commented, "Preach." Her coworker, a woman I'd met twice at happy hour, added, "Some men just can't handle confident women." And then there was Chloe, Vivian's best friend, the one who had always seemed to be in my corner, wrote, "This is why I'm single. Can't deal with fragile egos." They didn't know the context of the 2 a.m. texts or the hidden phone. They only knew the narrative Vivian had carefully constructed. Lincoln, the possessive boyfriend, being insecure about normal friendships. The humiliation was intensely specific. People I worked with, people whose respect I valued, were seeing this and knowing it was about me. They were seeing me labeled a fragile ego because I had asked a reasonable question about her behavior in our shared home. I sat there for 5 minutes, maybe 10, staring at the phone screen in my hand. The quiet hum of the office around me faded out. The anger I felt was cold and clinical, focused entirely on the betrayal of her method. She had not only dismissed my feelings, but she had weaponized them. That was the moment the lie finally shattered. All my efforts to be the calm, reasonable partner had only made me an easier target. My silence was interpreted as weakness, and my desire for trust was twisted into possessiveness. I realized then that my external goal, the want of stability, was impossible in this relationship because Vivian needed drama and control more than she needed truth. But what hit me hardest was the realization that I wasn't insecure, I was betrayed. And if she wanted to play a public game of secure partner versus fragile man, fine. I could play her game. But I would use her own rules against her. The lie was dead, and now I had to learn the truth. I needed to advocate for my own boundaries, even if the result was conflict. I scrolled through her comments again. Chloe's comment about fragile egos stung the most. I knew Chloe had a history of being drama-averse, so her alignment with Vivian meant the narrative had been cemented. Then the idea, simple and utterly petty, clicked into place. It was a clear, direct shot at her self-defined standard. If real partners truly do not get jealous, then my actions, no matter how friendly, should pose no threat. I commented beneath the quote graphic. I typed slowly, deliberately, ensuring every word was correct and measured. You are absolutely right. I apologize for being insecure. Real partners trust each other completely. She liked my comment immediately. I could almost hear the satisfied sigh she took, believing she had won the exchange, that the issue was resolved, and that I had been sufficiently chastised. She thought the conflict was over. It was just starting. I opened my photo album. Last summer, we had taken a trip to the coast with Chloe and another couple. There was a great group shot, taken at a bar, mid-laugh. Everyone slightly tipsy. In that photo, Chloe was standing right next to me, her arm casually draped over my shoulder. A genuinely happy, innocent moment. I cropped the picture. I made sure it was just the two of us, myself and Chloe, laughing, close, looking extremely friendly. No caption, no explanation. Just a smiling picture of myself with her best friend. I uploaded it and set it as my new profile picture. I leaned back in my chair, the rush of adrenaline fading into a terrifying, cold certainty. I had just taken a private marital argument and escalated it into a social media war. I knew, without a doubt, that this single silent picture was going to achieve what 2 weeks of polite questioning could not. I put my phone face up on my desk and waited. The counter-attack had been launched. The screen was set on my desk, face up. The new profile picture, just Chloe and me, smiling, a symbol of harmless friendship, sat waiting. The previous minutes had been defined by a cold, surgical calm. The feeling you get right after you launch a strike you know will hit its target. Now. I was focused on the clock, watching the slow passage of time as Vivian went from complacency to full-blown panic. I only had to wait 43 minutes. The silence of the office was shattered by the buzz of my phone, not the soft notification tone I usually used, but a rapid-fire succession of texts and pings. The volume was up, and heads started to turn subtly in my direction. I ignored them, keeping my focus locked on the screen. The messages were all from Vivian, a desperate, descending spiral of panic and accusation. First text, 12:03 p.m. Die. What the hell is that profile picture? Second text, 12:05 p.m. Die. Why is she in your profile pic? Take that down right now. Third text, 12:07 p.m. Fi. Are you trying to make me jealous? That is so immature, Lincoln. The speed of her reaction was astonishing. It took less than an hour for her to go from proclaiming my insecurity to demanding I delete an innocent photo with a friend. The hypocrisy was not just exposed, it was boiling over. I picked up the phone. My heart was not pounding, it was steady, pumping the cold, righteous anger I needed to sustain this. I typed one concise message, using her own earlier dialogue against her. She is just a friend. Real partners don't get jealous, remember? I thought insecurity was unattractive. I hit send and waited. The barrage of texts stopped instantly. Radio silence for about 10 minutes, which, in the context of our digitally addicted age, felt like an eternity. I used those 10 minutes to review the conversation in my mind, anticipating her next move. She would pivot to anger, then to manipulation. Then the phone rang. It wasn't a text, it was a call. Vivian almost never called me. She was a texter, a writer of long, passive-aggressive missives. A phone call meant she was genuinely losing control of the narrative, and that she needed immediate, real-time intervention. I answered on the second ring. This is not funny. Lincoln, she said the second I answered, her voice tight and high-pitched. What is not funny? I asked, allowing zero emotion into my voice. That picture. Why would you put that as your profile pic? It is disrespectful. It is just a photo with a friend, Vivian, I replied, leaning back in my office chair. I was using my deliberate, calm voice, the one she usually said she appreciated. You know, like how you have photos with your yoga friend, Daniel. I figured since we established that secure partners do not get jealous over friendships, this wouldn't be a problem. There was a long, ragged exhale on the other end of the line. She was scrambling for an argument that did not immediately implicate her. That is completely different, she snapped. How? I pressed, pushing the point. Is Chloe not a friend? Is Daniel a coworker? A friend is a friend, right? That is what you posted for the world to see. Because she is my best friend. And he is your yoga friend. She stammered, the words making no logical sense even to her. What is the difference, Vivian? Seriously. Use your words. If you trust me, what is the problem with a picture? She paused again, breathing heavily into the phone. She knew she had no logical ground to stand on. The foundation of her entire defense, the idea that only my insecurity was the issue, had crumbled the moment my behavior directly affected her. You are doing this to make a point, and it is pathetic. She finally spat out, abandoning logic for character assassination. I am doing exactly what you said secure partners do, I stated, allowing a flicker of cold satisfaction to color my tone. I am having a friendship without my partner getting jealous. Isn't that what you wanted? She said nothing else. The click of her hanging up was the final word, a retreat under fire. I placed the phone back down. The anxiety I had been suppressing for weeks was replaced by a kind of cold, quiet certainty. I had my answer. The relationship was not about trust. It was about control. I left work early, feeling an eerie, calm detachment. I had set a trap using her own ideology, and she had walked right into it. The confrontation was not over, but the terms had been dictated. When I walked into our shared apartment, the energy was ice cold, the silence heavier than any scream. I knew she was home, waiting for me. I braced myself, knowing the next step would be the final, physical defense of her double standard. When I walked into the apartment, the energy was less ice cold and more like a vacuum where atmosphere should have been. Vivian was standing in the living room, purse still in hand, her arms crossed tight against her chest. She looked less angry and more intensely frustrated. The kind of frustration that comes from having a carefully constructed wall dismantled with effortless logic. "Take it down," she said, her voice flat, the instant I dropped my keys. It wasn't a question or an appeal. It was a command. A desperate attempt to reset the balance of control. "Why?" I asked, walking past her into the kitchen to grab a glass of water. I wanted her to feel the absence of panic in my voice. "Because it is disrespectful to me," she insisted, following me. "You know how that looks, Lincoln." I turned, leaning against the counter. "Is it more disrespectful than posting a public rant about your boyfriend being insecure, a post that humiliated me in front of our entire social circle, without ever actually talking to me about the issue first?" "That is not the same thing," she said quickly, the familiar defensive wall going up. "Explain to me how it is different," I challenged, holding her gaze. I was pushing her, not to argue, but to articulate the hypocrisy. "Use your words, Vivian. If your friendship with Daniel is innocent and requires trust, then my friendship with Chloe is also innocent and requires trust. Why does your required trust stop the moment it is applied back to you?" She just stood there, speechless. She opened her mouth, but the only sounds were sputtering half-syllables. She could not find the argument, because there was no logical defense for her position. She could only rely on emotional force, but I had finally removed my susceptibility to her emotional force. "Here is what I think," I said calmly, taking a slow drink of water. "I think you wanted to have your cake and eat it too. You wanted the complete freedom to text whoever you want at any hour, without question, while also having a boyfriend who doesn't do anything that might make you feel jealous. That is not a partnership, Vivian. That is a double standard." "I do not have a double standard," she whispered, her eyes starting to fill with frustration, not sadness. "Then why does my profile picture bother you? She is just a friend. I am not hiding anything. The photo is completely innocent. If you trust me, there is no problem." She broke the stare, turning and marching into the bedroom. The sound of the door slamming shut was a familiar, juvenile punctuation mark on her failure to communicate. I spent the night on the couch, sleeping better than I had in weeks. The exhaustion of upholding the lie was finally receding. The next morning, the battle shifted from a private skirmish to a full-scale social war. I woke up to a flurry of texts, not from Vivian, but from her sister, her mother, and two of her closest friends. The flying monkeys had been deployed. They were all variations on the same themes. "What you did was cruel. You are being emotionally abusive. She is devastated. And real men don't play games." Her sister's message was the longest. demanding I apologize and take the picture down. Because I was deliberately trying to hurt her. I responded to her sister directly, keeping my tone polite but firm. Did she tell you why I posted it? Did she mention her public post calling me insecure for asking about 2 a.m. texting? Or the 3 weeks of late night conversations with another guy? Her sister replied instantly. That is none of my business. But my profile picture is your business, I replied. She left me on read. Then Vivian's mother called. This woman had been nothing but kind to me for 2 years. Now, her voice was cold with disappointment. I thought you were one of the good ones, Lincoln. Posting pictures with other women to hurt my daughter. That is not who I thought you were. Mom, with all respect, I said, my voice shaking slightly because I did respect her. Did she tell you she publicly humiliated me online before any of this happened? I asked her why she was texting someone at 2 a.m. repeatedly. That is the full extent of my controlling behavior. The picture was just me demonstrating what she claimed was acceptable behavior. There was a long silence. She admitted Vivian had mentioned a post, but had claimed I was being controlling about her friendships. The narrative was completely skewed. The conversation ended with her saying she would talk to Vivian. I doubted it would help. The true breakthrough, however, arrived a few hours later. It was a text from Chloe, her best friend, the one in my profile picture. Hey. So I just want to say I am not mad about the picture thing. Actually, I thought it was kind of hilarious. I stared at the text. Really? Dude. She continued. She has been texting that yoga guy like crazy for months. All of us have noticed. She literally showed us their conversations at brunch last week, and they were not just friendly. The nauseous feeling was back. But this time, it was mixed with a surge of vindication. I was not crazy. I was not insecure. My suspicions were founded in fact. What do you mean, not just friendly? I typed, my hands shaking. Chloe laid out the whole truth. Like lots of flirty stuff, pet names. Plans to meet up without you knowing. She told us she was keeping her options open in case things with you didn't work out. The lie I had fought so hard to maintain for 2 years. The idea that the relationship was stable and that my partner was committed was destroyed in a single paragraph from her best friend. I felt sick, but incredibly validated. My anxiety was not a character flaw, it was a reliable indicator of reality. I finally had the evidence. I needed to stop fighting to be trusted, and to start fighting for the truth. When Vivian came home that evening, the air was tense, but I was no longer emotionally reactive. The discovery had given me a kind of surgical calm. I waited until she had thrown her keys down and was heading toward the bedroom. We need to talk about Daniel, I stated simply. She stopped instantly. We talked about Daniel. You are being ridiculous. I am not having this conversation again. No, we haven't. I countered, standing my ground. We need to talk about the fact that your own best friend, Chloe, told me this afternoon that you have been talking about keeping your options open, and that your conversations with Daniel involve pet names and plans to meet up behind my back. The shift in Vivian was immediate and terrifying. The defensive posture vanished, replaced by outright panic, and then a desperate feral aggression directed at the new threat. She is a liar. Vivian spat, turning on Chloe instantly. She has always been jealous of our relationship. She is trying to break us up. I watched her frantic performance, noting how quickly she was willing to sacrifice a 2-decade friendship to save her narrative. Last week, Chloe was your staunch supporter, commenting on your post about insecure men. Now she is a lying home wrecker. I asked, my voice dangerously low. People show their true colors, Vivian. And you are showing yours right now. She tried a different tactic. The last resort of the manipulator. Her voice softened, she closed the distance between us, and her hand reached out tentatively to touch my arm. Baby, please, she murmured, tears welling in her eyes. This is getting out of control. Can't we just start over? I will delete my post right now. You delete your picture. We forget any of this happened. It was the perfect apology. Empty of accountability, full of compromise on the superficial issues. And you will stop texting Daniel at 2 a.m.? I asked, watching her face closely. She hesitated. The pause was a lifetime. He is just a friend, Lincoln. I should not have to give up friendships for you. That was it. That final refusal was the engine of the entire fight. She wanted the unconditional privilege of the friendship, but would not grant the same unconditional trust back. Then I shouldn't have to give up mine, I said, pulling my arm away. The picture stays. She lost it completely. She started screaming about how I was punishing her, how I was being vindictive, and how if I truly loved her, I would just swallow my feelings and move on. You are not fighting for this relationship. I did trust you, I replied, the truth finally cutting through the noise. Then you publicly humiliated me instead of talking to me. Trust is earned, Vivian, and you just spent all of yours. With that, she retreated to the bedroom. 20 minutes later, she emerged with a packed overnight bag, her face red and distorted. I am going to my sister's, she announced, the words loaded with the implication that I had forced her out. Fine by me, I replied, standing in the doorway, feeling a profound sense of relief, not sadness. She left, slamming the exterior door hard enough to rattle the cheap glass. I slept on the couch again that night. But this time, the tension was gone. I finally slept well. The next day, the social media chaos continued. Her flying monkeys were in full attack mode. Receiving the new, revised narrative, Lincoln has become abusive and kicked her out. But I had reached a point of emotional detachment. Their opinions, based on lies, no longer carried weight. My attention shifted when I received an unexpected message. A direct Instagram message from Daniel, the yoga friend. He was making a last-ditch effort to control the story. Hey man, I just wanted to reach out and clear the air. The message read, there is nothing going on between me and your girl. She told me you have been really possessive and controlling. And honestly, I feel bad for her. Maybe you should work on your insecurity issues. The audacity was breathtaking. The primary source of the entire conflict was now lecturing me on my emotional health. I felt the last vestiges of my original Lee. The idea that I was responsible for everyone else's comfort dissolve completely. I replied instantly, not with anger, but with precision. Thanks for the input. Quick question. Do you regularly text women in relationships at 2 a.m. about their family's time zone issues. He stuck to the narrative. I don't know what she told you, but we are just friends. Cool. I typed back. Then you won't mind if I share this conversation with your own girlfriend. I noticed from your profile you are in a relationship. I am sure she would love to know about your close friendship with my girlfriend, and all those late night heart to hearts. The keyboard showed he was typing, then stopped. He was immediately left on read. I had found the ultimate lever. The relationship was over. But the need to expose the hypocrisy, for my own sanity, was not. I was no longer fighting for Vivian's trust. I was fighting for the truth. The silence from Daniel, the yoga friend, after my final message was the only confirmation I needed. His frantic attempt to control my narrative failed the moment, and I threatened to apply his own standards to his life. I spent the rest of that afternoon doing some light social media reconnaissance. I found his girlfriend's profile. Lots of photos of them looking happy, the usual couple stuff. She seemed nice, and she probably had no idea. My anxiety about being the controlling boyfriend had been replaced by a fierce, protective certainty about the truth. I remembered how I felt, the knot in my stomach, the way my confidence was eroded by a single question. Am I crazy for asking this? She deserved to know the answer was no. My message to her was simple, devoid of rage or dramatic language. Hey, I am sorry to reach out like this, but I thought you should know. Your boyfriend, Daniel, has been texting my girlfriend late at night for months, and they have been making plans to meet up without either of us knowing. A 50. I don't have proof beyond what I have witnessed and what my girlfriend's friends have told me, but I wanted you to have the information. Do with it what you will. It was an information drop, not an order. I didn't ask her to leave him. I just gave her the facts I had fought so hard to uncover. She responded within an hour. Thank you for telling me. I have had my suspicions for a while. He has been really protective of his phone lately. 2 days later, Daniel's Instagram went private. Then I heard through the grapevine that he was suddenly taking a break from yoga. My calculated action had caused real, immediate consequences for someone who assumed he could operate in the dark. Vivian's reaction to this was explosive. She called me, screaming about meddling and ruining an innocent person's life. You had no right to contact her, she shrieked. Funny, I replied. I thought we established that friends can have innocent friendships and jealous partners need to deal with it. Or does that only apply when it benefits you? She hung up, her signature exit when confronted with unassailable logic. Meanwhile, the narrative war intensified. My brother called me, asking what the hell was going on because his girlfriend heard I was abusive. My own name, Lincoln, had become the subject of whispered accusations throughout our entire social ecosystem. This was my lowest point. I had acted with integrity, and my reward was to be labeled a sociopath by people who were only hearing a weaponized version of events. My reputation, my stability, the very identity I had worked to cultivate, was at risk. A few days later, I came home to a jarring, low-level violation. Nothing major, but a book on my nightstand was now on the floor. A jacket was hanging in the guest closet, not mine. She had used her key to enter the apartment while I was at work. It was a silent, unnerving reminder that she still had access to my physical space, and she was testing the boundaries. I went to the hardware store that evening, determined to make a final, physical assertion of my independence. I spent $175 on a new lock set. Changing the locks was a simple mechanical task, but the act felt monumental. It was the physical closure of the lie. She no longer had a key to my home, just as she no longer had access to my emotions. Peace of mind, I decided, was priceless. The inevitable text came the next morning. Why won't my key work? Because I changed the locks. You can't do that. I still live there. My name is on the lease. Your name isn't on the lease. I texted back, cutting through her manufactured reality. I added you to the apartment informally, because we were dating. If you want to discuss the legal situation, feel free to contact a lawyer. She threatened to call the police and say I was illegally locking her out. I told her to go ahead. I had the sole tenancy documents. She did not call the police. Instead, she sent her father. Her dad was a physically imposing man, broad, shouldered and quiet. He showed up at my door that Saturday morning, and for one terrifying second, I thought the situation was about to become violent. "We need to talk, Lincoln," he said, his voice deep and serious. I let him in. He sat on the edge of my couch, looking intensely uncomfortable, which was surprising, given his demeanor. "Look," he started, his hands clasped between his knees. "I don't know the whole story here. What I know is my daughter has been crying for 2 weeks, and everyone is pointing fingers. But I also know she is not exactly innocent." I stared at him, stunned. This was the first glimmer of objective reality from anyone in her family. Her mother, and I raised her better than this. He continued, sighing heavily. "I heard about the texting and the public post thing, and I am not proud of how she handled any of this. But she is still my kid, and she is in a bad place right now." I realized then that he was not an interrogator. He was a desperate father trying to find a compromise. "What do you want me to do about that, sir?" I asked, keeping my voice soft, acknowledging his pain. "I don't know," he admitted. "I guess I am hoping you two can work this out. You were good for her, Lincoln. Stable. Better than the guys she usually goes for." This was the ultimate validation, and it was delivered privately, by the most unlikely source. But it was too late. "With respect, sir, I am not sure there is anything to work out." I told him honestly. She publicly humiliated me, lied about her friendships, got caught, and has spent the last 2 weeks trying to make me the villain. That is not the foundation for a healthy relationship. He nodded, slowly, processing the truth. "I figured you would say that. Can't say I blame you." He left after that, the most civil conversation I had had in weeks. The relationship was now fully over, validated by the person who cared the most for her. The only thing left was the final, formal closure. The conversation with Vivian's father provided the necessary shield. The family patriarch knew the score, and that truth stripped away the last of Vivian's leverage. She was staying at her sister's place, soaking up the validation and the victim narrative her sister eagerly provided. But the social storm was dying down, turning into low, level background noise. The actual end of the relationship, the point where the knot was finally cut, came last week. Vivian reached out, asking to have what she called a mature conversation. I agreed, mostly out of a detached curiosity. I wanted to see if, given time and distance, she was capable of seeing the reality of her actions. I let her in, and we sat on the couch. The very spot where she had sworn I was being insecure, and where I had slept the night she had slammed the door. She began with the performance. "I miss you," she started, her voice soft and fragile. "I miss us. I miss who I thought you were. I made mistakes. I know that now. But I really do love you, Lincoln, and I think we can get past this if we both try." I felt nothing. The emotional well had run dry. I looked at her, and I did not see the woman I had dated for 2 years. I saw the antagonist who had publicly shamed me and secretly betrayed me. "Here is my issue," I said, leaning forward. My voice was calm and steady, the voice of the person who had finally learned to advocate for himself. You wanted the freedom to have whatever friendships you wanted, however close they were, without any questions from me. That was your standard. But the second I did something that made you even slightly uncomfortable, a completely innocent profile picture, you lost your mind. You mobilized your family and publicly called me abusive. I felt the immense weight of the lie. The idea that I should have just gotten over it, lifting completely. "That is not a partnership, Vivian," I continued. "That is a dictatorship where only your feelings matter. The rules only apply to me." I said I was sorry about the post. She insisted, defensive again. "You are sorry you got caught." I corrected her gently, but firmly. "There is a difference. You are sorry I exposed your double standard publicly. You are sorry your yoga buddies' girlfriend found out what was happening. But you are not actually sorry for how you treated me, or for your secretive behavior. You are sorry for the consequences." She started crying, real tears this time, born of frustration that her manipulation was failing.
"That is not true! I am sorry!"
I didn't think you would react like this. You were always so calm and easygoing. I thought you would just get over it." Her words were the final, painful validation of my journey. She had built the relationship on the certainty that I would suppress my own needs for her comfort. "You thought I would just accept being humiliated," I said. "You wanted me to be easygoing to the point of being a pushover. I thought you would fight for us," she wailed, retreating to the ultimate victim position. "That is what this was," I said, rising to my feet, standing my ground and demanding equal standards in our relationship, was me fighting for us. It was me finally fighting for of my side of the relationship. But I can't fight for something you don't want. You wanted permission to do whatever you wanted without consequence. When I asked for the same thing, it was unacceptable. I offered her no solution, no compromise. I simply stated the facts of the reality she had created. The conversation was over. She left that night, and we have not spoken since. The final, mundane chapter closed 3 days later. I came home from work to find her remaining clothes and belongings gone. The empty closet looked huge. On my kitchen counter, resting on the granite, was a small, crumpled piece of paper. The final communication. It read, Thanks for nothing. I stared at that note for a long time. 2 years of shared life, and that was the last word. 3 childish, blame, shifting words. There was no apology, no accountability, just the final, firm declaration that she truly believed I've had wronged her by demanding the same treatment she expected for herself. The emotional gymnastics were exhausting, even in absentia. I crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash. The apartment felt different after that. It was emptier, of course, but it was also lighter somehow. Her presence had been heavier than I realized. The constant management of her moods, the exhaustion of constantly measuring what I was allowed to feel versus what would be labeled insecure. The emotional math was finally over. The feeling was not one of sadness, but of profound, quiet relief. The relationship was over, and I had finally learned the truth. I needed to advocate for my own boundaries, even if it caused conflict. I spent that first weekend completely alone, just existing. I watched what I wanted on television. I ate take-out pizza without anyone commenting on my health choices. I even left a few dishes in the sink overnight without waking up to a passive, aggressive stack of clean plates waiting for me. These were small freedoms, minuscule things, but they added up to something that felt like genuine relief. The quiet was louder than the arguments ever were, and the quiet was peace. The relationship was over, and 2 years is a long time. There was sadness mixed in, certainly, because not all of it had been messy, but that sadness was outweighed by the liberation. From walking on eggshells, from constantly wondering if I was being too controlling, for having basic expectations. As for the others, the fallout continued to settle. Chloe and I still texted occasionally. She apologized sincerely for not warning me sooner, explaining she had felt stuck between loyalty to her friend and doing the right thing. I told her I understood. She had provided the truth when I desperately needed it, and that was enough. Vivian, predictably, was telling people we broke up because I couldn't handle her independence, which was a creative interpretation of events. I let her have it. The people who mattered, my brother, my close friends, and the objective eye of her own father, knew the truth. The people who chose to believe her version weren't really in my corner anyway. The profile picture is gone now. I took it down a few days after we officially ended things. It had served its purpose. It was a catalyst that exposed a double standard and forced a conversation that needed to happen. The relationship might not have survived that conversation, but a relationship built on rules for her and not for me was never going to work long term. Daniel, the yoga guy, is still dealing with the consequences. I heard his ex-girlfriend compared notes with the other women he was just friends with, and they found a lot of overlap in his playbook. Some things have a way of working themselves out, not because of karma, but because deceit is inherently messy and self-defeating. For me, I am focusing on work, reconnecting with friends I had neglected while trying to keep Vivian happy and just living my life. Dating is not on my radar right now. I need to be completely sure I trust my own judgment again before I involve anyone else. The hardest part of all of this wasn't the breakup itself. It was realizing how long I had been accepting behavior I shouldn't have. The late Night texting was just the final straw. There had been months of smaller slights, the constant moving of goalposts, where nothing I did was ever quite enough. I had been so focused on not being labeled controlling, John, or jealous that I had swung too far the other way and become someone who didn't advocate for himself at all. I was living under the lie that my silence was stability. That profile picture moment, that petty, calculated action, was me finally pushing back, and the lesson, if there is one, is simply: standards only matter if they are applied equally. If you want freedom, you have to grant it too. And if you publicly shame your partner for having feelings, do not be shocked when they find a way to make their point just as publicly. The truth I learned is that I must advocate for my own boundaries regardless of how uncomfortable it makes the other person. That is not insecurity, that is self-respect.